Hello and welcome to the Online Prosperity Show. My name is Yako Jackson. I am a healer, a coach, an author, a speaker, and a mother. The founder of The People Practice, which is a coaching consultancy that works with people, leaders, communities, and organizations to really align with what's true and what's real, what's honest for them. In this episode, you're going to find out about my life journey. You're going to find out about how I got to where I am, the challenges that I faced, and how I continue to overcome them. I hope that you are able to learn a thing or two for yourself and reach out if you want to chat. Thank you very much and enjoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the number one place where entrepreneurs, coaches, and change makers learn how to build. Okay, what did I say there? How to build. One second.
No problem.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the number one place where entrepreneurs, coaches, and change makers learn how to build purpose-driven businesses that just don't make money, but actually make meaning. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we're going to be diving into a story about transformation. I mean, the kind that starts when life actually throws you a curveball and forces you to become who you truly are. And I guessed Yako Jackson, who's the founder of The People Practice, a consultancy that's helping leaders and organizations move from performance to purpose. And I can't wait to jump into this conversation. Now, Yako, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prosper, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. I've been looking around on all the things that you have done and who you've become. But for those that are meeting you for the very first time, Yako is a mother, coach, healer, strategist, facilitator, and speaker who is the founder of The People Practice. And as I've mentioned, this is a consultancy that helps leaders and organizations move from performance to purpose and from exhaustion to alignment. And for those that are a little bit eager from hustle, because everybody's in the hustle culture now, to actual coherence. And the very thing that makes her story powerful is it started with something that a lot of us fear dearly, and she's going to be telling us what that is. So stay tuned, because I think this is going to be an episode and a half. And whatever it is that happened to Yako, it didn't break her. It actually became the doorway for her becoming the guide that she is today. So maybe you've questioned your own path, or maybe you felt you're going out of alignment, or maybe the big C really shifted things for you. I don't know. Or maybe you wondered that there's so much that's just happening and you're not maybe in control and you're not leading from your truth. I want this episode to be that shining light for you. But before we dive in, I encourage you to subscribe to whatever platform that you're watching right now, whether you're on YouTube or Spotify, because you don't want to miss out on these kind of stories that actually remind us that success isn't about doing more, but it's actually about becoming more. Now, Yako, I could go on and talk about things that I'm not even qualified to talk about. All right. We've strung the viewer a little bit now, and we said your journey begins when something happened. Maybe take us to that particular time before you started The People Practice. What actually happened?
Sure. Yeah. So I got retrenched from my job, and it was a fantastic, fantastic job. It was my first gig as an executive. And 18 months later, the role got made redundant and I was thrown out of the corporate world. And at the time, I mean, that there was mixed feelings, right? There's the feeling of, goodness me, what am I going to do? What will become of me? And the feeling of, was I not good enough? Am I being let go because I didn't actually add value? And going through and almost metabolizing all of those emotions landed me at a point where I realized the job of pulling myself together, the work of actually showing me the value that I believe I do have, is going to be something I'm going to have to show myself. So instead of throwing myself back into, the ocean of, applying for the next available role, negotiating and seeing if there's another role internally that I could possibly, be redeployed to, yeah, I suppose it was a calling or an acknowledgement that I've got to show myself who it is that I believe I am. Finally, it felt like an opportunity in that moment. Yeah.
And thank you so much for opening us up with that, because so many people, whenever retrenchment or those words, or redundancy sort of are thrown around, it really puts people in a state of fear and panic. So you said you'd enjoyed the role for 18 months. What were you doing in that particular role?
So I'd been onboarded to set up the strategic project and program management office for the organization. So really looking after the governance of how projects are run, the structure enterprise-wide, to ensure that there is visibility, transparency, again, governance structure, from top to bottom, really, of major projects and internal kind of focused projects to deliver value and execute on strategy. So that was the job.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously for you to be given such a mandate, you would have had to maybe rise through the ranks, maybe
Yes.
within that particular job and things of that nature. What was that sort of climb up for you up until the moment?
Perhaps if I can go back to how I started off maybe in the corporate world. My very first job, funny enough, was at the same organization when I was 23, 24. I started out as a call center agent, and that's how I broke into the world of work. I had completed a learnership, or we can call it an internship, in IT technical support. And I joined this call center environment. And 2-3 years later, I got an opportunity to grow within that space. I became a team leader, then a supervisor, then a manager, then a senior manager. And then 7 years into it, I went into banking. And that's when I first got my degree. The very first degree I got, I think I'd been in the workforce for about 7 or 8 years. And I had, through pure grit, really, progressed quite well in the leadership ranks. And I got my first degree and then started adding on my qualifications in that way. But I'd already grown. I was in a banking space and big corporate, and leading a team of really, really fantastic, talented people, multidisciplinary team, change managers, business analysts, learning and development specialists, communication specialists. And the job there was to land technology across the business, across the continent, pardon me. An internet banking platform, if we can call it that, for corporates that was, or it still is actually being offered by this banking institution. And I did that for 7 years. And then the people development or the people leadership bug kind of bit right back, because I found that in the banking space, it was really cold, the texture or feeling of leadership wasn't quite the same as what I'd experienced in my previous job. That's when I pursued coaching, trying to understand, how does one add value in a leadership role outside of just being appointed as a leader of people. And the skill then became completing a postgrad diploma in coaching. And another kind of part of my life that called me into that space was acknowledging my roots, acknowledging the path and the way of my people by way of being trained and initiated as a healer. So all of those kind of converged as I was progressing in corporate. 7 years into all of that, I then moved into consulting, which gave me an opportunity to really, really play in the field of crafting solutions and leading initiatives for different corporates. So leadership development initiatives for, corporates in insurance, corporates in telecoms, corporates in retail. So that's where I got to flex the muscle of project management, program management, change management, facilitation, leadership development, from crafting the solution to actually lending it, and lending it in a way that also allowed me to bring my full self into the room, not just me as a leader, not just me as a coach, not just me as a healer or a teacher, but a blend of all of those different dimensions of who I am as an offering. And from then, I then got the opportunity to join the organization that I just left. So this is like an 18-year, roughly, journey, through corporate, through different industries. And I think I got to a point where all of the things that I'd learned, from skill to actual education to life experience, culminated into this that is sitting in front of you today. So a skilled professional and human first, and then, pulling at whatever bucket, because I've got a mixed bag, really. It's not a one-track kind of path. There's a fruit there, there's a vegetable there, there's a cookie there, there's cheese there. So, yeah.
You're like an omelet, you know what I mean? It's just all wrapped up in there and things of that nature. But let's unpack this omelet a little bit, because the interesting thing is you started, like you say, in a call center, and you rose through the ranks, even though it was in different places and all of that. And there was a lot of learning in person, and also, through tertiary sort of education and formally being educated along. So you were literally creating a path that is unique to you. But I heard something while we were going through this chain, that you also started incorporating the traditional healing side of things. Now let's maybe focus on that a little bit, and then we bring together the parts of, obviously the person that you became, plus the traditional stuff that was going on. Just give us a glimpse into what that entails, and who are you becoming?
Who was I becoming, or who am I becoming? Okay, so that part is messy, I suppose, as is all other aspects of life. Where to begin? So I went into formal training in 2015, I would say. 2016 was when I embarked on the journey of actually being initiated as a Motswana traditional healer, or Setswana traditional healer, we can call it that. But the journey leading up to that was not easy. It wasn't a decision that I made. I think it's one of those things where you feel like life forces you to really, much like where I am now, where you get retrenched and then you have to figure out what it is that you're going to do. My journey to finally coming to a point of acceptance was not an easy one. I was raised in a Christian family. And although, yes, my parents come from, the rural areas of the Northwest Province in South Africa, our customs and traditions were not in my face. I only understood just by way of being told stories and understanding that, that uncle is a healer, your grandmother comes from a royal family, but none of it meant anything to me personally. I'd have dreams that were off, and my parents normalized my dream life to me. I would tell them what I'd seen in my dreams, and it was never made into anything. So in my mind, I thought everybody saw what I saw when I was sleeping. So I'd never say anything to people. I remember both my parents are late, but my mother would always kind of say, no, if you see, for instance, if you see your grandmother in your dream and she insists that you don't leave, understand that if you decide to stay with her there, you're not going to wake up. So rather, offer her something, ask her what she wants, and tell her that you'd have to leave and then come back and present it to her. Then you can leave with grace and come back the next night or whatever. So that kind of helped me accept that it was just normal. Until I was much older, both my parents were gone. Then I realized this is not normal. Other people don't experience life this way. I mean, outside of having dreams that actually do come true about people and situations, I didn't think it meant anything. But it got to a point where if the dreams were a little too vivid, a little too confrontational, and I had no choice, honestly, but to hand it over to God. How I came to accept was to say to God that, you know that I am of you. If this is something that is clean and pure, you made me, you understand, my shortfalls, you know that I'm stubborn, I remember quite vividly, I said, do not harden my heart so you can punish me like you did with King Pharaoh. That was my prayer for myself. Right. Soften me up so that I can surrender. And it was through that I was able to walk back into myself. And I discovered a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of healing, a wealth of just abundance through and through in the teachings of my people, the ways of my people. And yeah, it still drives how I live and how I show up in the world today. And it does inform how I show up in my coaching sessions, how I show up in business, how I show up as a mother, in my life, all the dimensions of my life.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us there, because then that really opens us up to the actual uniqueness that you bring to the table, because to whom much is given, much is required. You were receiving these dreams, and obviously they needed some sort of outlets or things of that nature. But as a young girl, maybe you can walk us through an example of a dream. Like, would you dream of eating candy, or would you dream of other people in different places, and maybe those things will actually become real? Because I know as a kid, I always wished I had all the money in the world so I could buy all the sweets that I could. And half of the time I would dream about that.
Okay. All right. So maybe I'll share 2 or 3 dreams that were symbolic, but actually upon interpretation turned out to like what I saw in the dream and what actually happened were, one and the same thing. I had an aunt who was ill. I think I was about 11 because my mother was still alive at the time, 11 or 12. And I went to go visit her in hospital. And days after I'd seen her, I saw her in my dream. She was, so back home where I come from, right in front of my house, there's a bus stop. And I'd walked out of my house to go God knows where. And as I walked past the bus stop, there she is, sitting there, and she was in a wedding dress. And so I said, I'm gonna, Auntie, I'm gonna stand here with you. Where are you going? And she said, no, I'm waiting for my bus. I'm leaving. So I thought, okay, let's wait. And then I'll carry on after you've gotten your bus. As we're standing, so buses kept on coming, and she would get up and I would say to her, no, that's not your bus. So after having kind of missed a few buses that she thought were hers, I then say, I will tell you when your bus arrives. We sit out, eventually a bus comes through, and I say, okay, that's the one that you're going to get on. And she got on the bus, she left. That morning, when I told my mother, she then explained to me that means she is no more. And we received the news that day that she had passed away. Another one is of my own mother. because from that day, she then explained to me, when you see somebody who's unwell and you see them in this way, it means they're not coming back. So she told me that if you see somebody, you see how I am, like half this image, not a full body picture. She then explained to me, if somebody's ill and you see them like this, over and above seeing somebody getting on a bus, in a wedding dress, la-di-da, la-di-da, that also means that person is going to pass away. So on the 12th of July in 1996, I woke up in the morning and I'd seen my mother in that way. She was ill. And I went to her mother and I told her, she's gone. And at 3:15 that day, we received the news that my mother had died. So that was when I was a little girl. And now, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I had a dream about somebody I'd worked with many years ago. We weren't friends, we weren't close, we were just colleagues. Pleasantries in the kitchen, and that's that. And in my dream, I see this person, I hear her voice actually, and she's walking me through her vision board. And as she's taking me through the different parts of the vision board, she says, as you can see, I now have my girls. But when I'm looking at her hands, she's holding a pair of socks, and she pages it almost like, you know how you flip cards, but they multiply. So it's no longer 2 socks, it's 4. I lift my eyes, there's 2 little girls there, babies. And then I see her face. And that really just felt random. I didn't understand what that was. The following day, I sent her a voice note. The babies turned 1 in September this year. She wasn't pregnant at the time, or at least she didn't know she was pregnant at the time of me having the dream. It was the 24th of January in 2024. Was it 4?
Yeah. So yeah. And thank you so much. And thank you so much for taking us through that, because then that really opens us up to the kind of, sort of work that you are doing and you're capable of sort of doing. But from all of the things that you've been mentioning, Mom was quite pivotal in maybe explaining some of these things and also giving you direction as to what is happening, or giving meaning and context to certain things. Now, was Mom also enlightened in that way, or was she just wise as an adult?
I think, well, she hadn't been trained, but I mean, if you look at where my mother comes from and where my father comes from, these are proper rural areas. My grandparents my mother's father lived until he was 102. And her mom until she was 98. These are people who really were so in touch with nature, so attuned to the cycles of nature. Ancient wisdom was a way of life for them. So my mother held on to those, and she passed on those teachings to us. I mean, I'm the youngest of 7 children, so I would imagine my siblings probably got, the best in terms of that kind of rich depth about who we are as African people, who we are in connection to nature, who we are in connection to and in relation to each other, But she wasn't a trained healer. She wasn't.
Great stuff. Now we've sort of come full circle. We've put together the whole traditional and also the formal training that you were going through. Now, as a person that was going through all of this in a world that practicing the traditional is not maybe everyday sort of conversation, did that bring a confusion maybe to yourself or the people that were around you, or maybe just because you were seemingly in both worlds, and that would have been something? And I'm also being very careful here because you're only seeing a bit of me. This is Zoom, okay? So I'm hoping that this is not going to be...
No need to be careful, or, it's all good. I wouldn't say the people around me so as much. It was something that I personally struggled with, because remember I mentioned that I didn't grow up with seeing and practicing these things. Right. And by the time I got to accept that or acknowledge or surrender, whatever the word we pick. Both my parents had already passed away. And I don't really want to talk about kind of like what pushed me over the edge, because this involves somebody else who had gone through something painful that I had seen again in a dream, but I didn't know what it is that I'd seen until after the fact. And that just, it completely crushed me. I felt so guilty. It was awful. And so there was a lot of shame and guilt and judgment. I mean, at some point I thought I was possessed by the devil, because what am I seeing? What are these things? And we go to church, and I've been prayed over so many times in an attempt to get this thing out of me. But that was the resistance. It was the struggle I had with knowing that it's okay to be that way connected. It's okay to discern. You are able to process all of this. It wasn't easy. I think actually I became a coach, if I'm being honest. I became a coach to try and bypass stepping into being a healer.
Right.
Because through conversation, I heal. So I thought, if I don't have to throw the bones and do the funny dances, and touch the medicine, because ew, then let me do. I even tried becoming a Reiki master. I tried to run. I did. So yeah, it was traumatic. It was painful. It wasn't easy. But the people around me, never judgmental. Never ever judgmental. I remember when I told my friends that I was being initiated, they were like, finally. I think I was holding the judgment. Everybody around me had always had a sense that you see differently, you feel differently, you're a little bit more intense, than others. You seem to get the things you want without struggling. You just believe in people. I attributed that to being a good leader, because I'd always had a leadership role. It hadn't clicked to me that perhaps the reason I lead so well is because I myself am led. That I'm responding to something bigger than just having gone on a management development program or a degree or whatever. It took forever for me to see that, yes, skill is skill, training is training, but all of this rests upon who and what I am inside. And that is a healer.
Absolutely. Now, this brings us back to that fateful day, 18 months, pretty much into the role, and then you got retrenched. So now I have a bit of a feeling maybe you could maybe correct me if I'm wrong on this, because many people would freeze when they're faced with uncertainty, of not knowing what's the future or what's going to happen or what's going to become of me. But you literally took all of those things and put them together into entrepreneurship, right? And I'm assuming at this particular moment that, like you said, you already had that confidence of knowing that it will be fine. Had you seen this before, or was it just that confidence running in you because, like I said, other people?
Nope. There was no sign, no dream, nothing, no little whisper about what was to come. It was a surprise. But the response inside was, let it happen. If my name is in the bucket, it's fine. Just let it happen. And when I think about my state at the time, I think it wasn't confidence, Prosper. It was maybe arrogance, because I hadn't taken into account what that actually meant. Do you know what I mean? From the time I started working to the day I got retrenched, I'd never been unemployed. And that's like 18 plus years. I'd always moved beautifully from one job to another. For that role, I was headhunted. I've cruised beautifully in corporate. So when I was let go, the feeling that everything was going to be fine was not... The reason I say it was arrogance is because what actually did happen was it was anything but fine. right? I stopped, or my service got terminated at the end of March. I registered the people practice, I think it was in April this year. And I must note that it wasn't my first company. I had had a coaching business before that had gotten deregistered because I had my 9 to 5 and I was coaching part-time. It was just like a hobby, something that I do because why not? And I was even coaching pro bono. I'd never really charged anybody for coaching sessions. Again, it was my way of healing while you give and you receive like that. But being retrenched and sitting in the truth of what that actually meant and having my life fall apart as a result gradually, not not right at the moment. And that's why I say it was arrogance, because there are certain things I think that I had thought about. I knew well in advance. I knew 3 months before that my last day would be at the end of March. But I don't remember making any kind of move or preparation to. I just assumed, that everything would go. I mean, I've got beautiful relationships in the industry. I'm great at what I do. Obviously, I'm going to be cutting a check at the end of April. I'm not going to be without. So yeah, it was overconfidence, I think, that didn't really set me up to succeed right off the bat when I did get let go. I don't know if does that kind of
absolutely. And there's always an interesting transition that happens, because you didn't decide you wanted to go back from what you've told me, right? You went straight into entrepreneurship, and obviously, what was that sort of transition now like? I mean, we now have an element of you having not really paid attention to what was happening, but now that you no longer have a paycheck at the end of April.
Yes. So the transition was rough, Prosper. It was violent, I would say, in the way that I had to wake up and realize that this is not autopilot. You're actually going to have to get involved here and show up in a way that you've never shown up before. For the first 3 months, I mean, I built my beautiful frameworks, I built my programs, I built, proposals, I reached out to my network, and the responses were good, except nothing actually came to fruition. It would be, yes, we're interested, let's do this, let's do that, but then they stop taking the calls. They don't return the emails and nothing, there's no income now. And that's when I realized I miscalculated here. And I did actually try to go back to corporate. I applied frantically for roles. I made a few calls and been to interviews, and even that didn't come to fruition. And it was at that point that I realized I need to kind of get my head or get out of my head and drop into my heart, if I can put it that way, and get real about what is actually happening. There's what I think I can do. I'm trusting in my own kind of ability, my own skill set, my own connections, but there's something else here, something much bigger that is being invited to come into the room that I've not listened to for a very long time. And that's when I came to understand that, I mean, there's the roles we play, but who you are at your core is what is most important. That is the thing that I think finding my way back to my center, finding my way back to my truth, is what has enabled me to pivot within the pivot. And from the time I realized that the way I'm showing up and the way I'm speaking about my business, the way I'm speaking about what I'm doing, because when I first started, I thought I'm registering the people practice, but I hadn't realized that I was actually showing up as somebody who's self-employed, not an entrepreneur. Right. And I hadn't even bothered to understand if there's a difference between the two, because building a business and making sure you get a salary at the end of the month are two different things. So that's the thing that I woke up to 3 months into having, registered and started the people practice, is that this is something much bigger than making sure that my bills are paid. This is building an empire. This involves other people. This is my footprint, in the world. And the way I have to be about it is I'm going to have to be bolder than I've ever been. And I don't know how to be that bold because, I've never been here before. And so, I have a coach who helped me have a conversation around crystallizing exactly what that means, exactly what that looks like. And for me, it's been about understanding what, and we can go into it a little bit more, but it's about finding a place of safety in yourself. It's not about getting money. It's not about getting the job. It's not about getting the contract. It's about walking into that part of yourself where you're safe enough to be in abundance, to be with wealth, to be with power, to be with authority, to be with challenge, even to be with difficulty, knowing that you are safe. And yeah, that practice of reminding myself that I am safe. I'm safe to feel pain. I'm safe to feel joy. I am safe to feel free has been, sure, something that I'd even likened to a conversation with my mother, a proper unveiling of, it's not about the things that we are chasing. It's not about even attaining those things, because I've achieved so much and it's all gone. The question is, who are you being while you're doing the things that you are doing? And that's been, that's the thing for me. That's my, I don't know what to call this, but
I love
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
I love that so much because yes, if you're going to be self-employed, you just got to be making sure that checks are coming in. But if you're building, and I love how you premise that, because if you're building, it doesn't matter what time it is. It doesn't matter how it's all happening, as long as there is, as you said, a lasting footprint. And there's a book in that, Yako. I feel like so many people get that wrong, in as much as just because no one is telling you when to clock on and clock off, it doesn't mean you're actually an entrepreneur. No, you are just somebody who tells themselves what time break time is. But those that are out there building, what's and on. But it takes a redemptive amount of self-awareness. And I like how you mentioned that, wisdom can be passed down, but becoming is always personal, because this is a journey that only a few people will be able to go through. People could read about it in books, people could listen to it on a podcast like this and things of that nature. But, you were going through all of this. Mm-hmm. The people that were around you are always my favorite people to want to find out. You were going for your own safety, but were they safe? You had kids by then. Mm-hmm. You had a whole life around you, your family, Ogo, and everyone.
It's so, again, when I speak about getting to a place of feeling safe in myself, it's important that I think we crystallize the fact that getting there was rough. It was painful. I've been scared. It was terrifying to actually be in this position, to not know what I was going to do for my children. I've got 3 children, 19, 17, and 12. And I've got my niece's daughter who's 6 years old. So you know how our families are set up, where one who has tends to look after the rest of the system.
Oh, absolutely.
So there was all of that that I had to come to reconcile with, to look at how the way that I was showing up, the way that I was living, the way that I was even with my family, in the manner that I was providing, I was giving from a place of lack. I hadn't realized that because I hadn't built that safety with having abundance, I just had access to money. over time. And it seemed like it was abundance, but it really wasn't. It was just access. Because when the access was cut off, boop, I couldn't find abundance inside of me. So it was literally rewiring my brain, relearning how to define these things for myself and to come back to a place of, I mean, if I've always gotten jobs that are high paying, why am I not finding a job now? Why? Clearly, there's something inside of me that's out of place. The people around me, absolutely amazing in that you get to see how the way that you carry yourself, the way that you express your pain and your joy, if you are a person who, like, I'm the provider in my home. So my state of being determines the mood in the house. I was telling a friend of mine that I'd always seen my relationships, because of the power that I held from a financial perspective. There was, yes, love, respect, kindness, but they were driven by duty. And when the ability to activate the duty was taken away, I started to see that I can actually lean on my children. I can lean on my children. I can lean on my sister. I can lean on. There's depth in who they are. They carried me. I didn't carry them. It's the most incredible thing I'd ever seen. My system, my friends, my immediate family, my extended family, the way that they rose to they didn't shift, they didn't waver in their belief in me when I couldn't see myself anymore, when I couldn't connect the dot between, how am I here? How their faith and belief in me became a mirror. It became a mirror, and it was a mirror that says, with or without the money, the essence of who you are is what we know. This is who you are. You are love. You are brilliant. You are resourceful, and you are whole. I'm grateful. I'm gonna cry now. I'm
Okay,
absolutely grateful. I'm thinking about it, and yeah, and I did, in a way, take those relationships for granted. I don't want to say, I'm not going to make it sound like it wasn't on purpose, but I see now that the way that I was showing up in those relationships was informed by the fact that I had more somehow, yes.
Yeah. I'm hearing something here, Yako. It's not who you are, it's whose you are. Because so many people get caught up in them being the leader or the person who they are, but that stays at that corner office. That stays the moment you step outside that elevator. Because when you're at home, you're Sally's dad, you're somebody's mom, so you actually are describing this coherence as alignment of thought and emotion and action, and I don't think a lot of people have that. How can a leader or just an everyday person start cultivating that coherence in their daily lives? Because fish don't see the water that they swim in. Like, you wouldn't have been able to see those things happening because your wallet, you were standing on your wallet and you could see further, but the moment the wallet shrunk, you could now start seeing, wait a minute, there's people that live around here.
Yes. And that there's value here. There's love here. There's depth. There's so much more than what money can buy. And that is what is holding me together. The question you ask, for me, I don't think there's one right answer around how we arrive at alignment or how we arrive at coherence. But the thing that eats away at me about the fact that we've got these faculties and somehow we don't tap into how powerful we are, and in that power, what we can create, is I think we don't know. I'm going to try an example. If you think about how easily it is for you to make a cup of tea, right? You don't sit there and wonder if the kettle is going to allow you to boil the water. There's like from the moment you have the thought to the moment you take the action, when you are only making a cup of tea, it's green lights all the way. There's nothing that you plant in yourself that says, where do you get the confidence to think you could make a cup of tea? And the only reason it happens that quickly is because of practice. But when we start thinking about building businesses, because you've not practiced it, you've not done it before, there's distance between the thing you want and actually making it happen for yourself. However, my story, my postulate, if you can call it that, is that the process you follow to make a cup of tea is exactly the same process that you would need to follow to get good at running a business, to get good at manifesting whatever it is that you want to manifest. Because you first see the thing in your mind, you taste, you've decided, is it going to have sugar? Is it going to have milk? Is it going to, what cup am I going to use? But because you're not observing yourself in the making of the thing in your head, you discount the process. That's why you would need to be deliberate when you think about building a business. You need to think about, okay, who does this business serve? Who benefits from this? And when I'm in exchange with them, what is the feeling that they're getting? Who else is there? What day is it? Be as crisp as possible. So see first the thing clearly in your mind, every single detail, and come with the emotion to charge the vision that you've got. And that closes the gap between what you want and you actually having it, just by way of seeing it, believing it, feeling all the feelings that have to do with that, because you step into who you would be if that thing was real. And what then happens is somehow you activate yourself to start behaving as a person who you literally raise your vibration, if I can call it that. You are able to, you vibrate at the frequency of the thing you want. Awesome. So then it becomes second nature. That's why you'd find people who start businesses, they've got multiple businesses, but how do you do it? It's because they've applied that formula, if you want to call it that. You see it, it's clear, every detail is accounted for. The feeling of who you are in that space then brings you closer to you becoming the person who makes those kind of things happen, like making a cup of tea.
Absolutely. Did I understand you correctly then? Let's go back to your tea example. So the kettle is somebody has already invented it. Somebody has already made sure electricity comes to that particular faucet. The tea bag is already in the bag. All you just got to do is water. That's the only action, really. And then dip the tea bag and the sugar is already there. Somebody refined it, discovered that it's safe for you to eat, and everything is just there. Whereas when you're starting a business, you have to discover electricity and you have to figure out, will metal last, or should I put it in a plastic container? Then you start with plastic melts. You start back again to the drawing board. Should I use paper? Will paper last the heat? And it's that whole experimenting and then putting it all together, and up until you can sit back and have a beverage. See, yes. Now you no longer chase outcomes. You just let life unfold.
Yes, 100%.
That's the tea right there, right?
So, exactly. That's it. That's it right there, Prosper. It's, I think, there's a misunderstanding, I think, around who we are, how we are built, and how the way we are built actually works. Like if we, for instance, understood, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm not going to claim to be, but if we understood that the function of our brain is ABC, and the function of our heart is DEF, and the function of our body is whatever. And then understanding that if you use your heart and your brain, this is what you get. That sounds like a recipe, doesn't it? Because these are ingredients.
If this, then that.
Exactly. Then the manner in which you respond to the things that you create becomes less about being bad at being the thing. Like, it's not about this tea is bad tasting, meaning I can't make tea. It's about, I am a creator. I can create. I have the tools to create. I have a brain. I have a heart. I have an able body. I have a mind that is sound. These are the things that I have at my disposal to create, whether I'm making tea or I'm building an empire. Now, let's look at what it is that is present in my life right now. Like the circumstances, I got retrenched. So what I've created is not pleasing to me. Does that mean I am bad at what I do? No. Does that mean I should never ever try again because I tried and I failed? No. The tools with which I create are fine. I must just use them again and align my thoughts and my emotions such that what I produce is pleasing. Am I making sense?
Oh, absolutely. Thomas Edison had 1,000 failed attempts, failed in quotes, of making the light bulb. But when he was asked how he went through that process, he mentioned, I now know 1,000 ways that don't work. So I'm assuming if somebody would come to the people practice right now, maybe they're burnt out, they're disconnected, they're unsure where to start. You have 1,000 ways for you to help them figure out how to, what the next logical step would be. Now, just, for those that are listening right now, what will probably be the first thing that you'd have them do or reflect on?
Let's have a good look at what's in front of you. What is the thing that has brought you here? Your business has failed. And what does that mean? What meaning are you attaching to it? Because if the business has failed and you say, I am a failure, what that does is it informs your mind never to try dreaming again. It informs your heart not to get excited about potential growth. It shuts you down. So the judgment that we apply is what determines the next course of action. So your business has failed. Fine. Let's look at how you got there. How aligned were you? How clear were you in terms of your visioning for the end product? How attuned were you in your heart about seeing to it that what you want is going to happen? Faith, if we can call it that. And what actions did you take? If you are objective in how you are looking at your output, if you don't assign meaning that ends up folding you back, you ignite a different kind. You become curious about, this is not working. I wonder, what could I have done differently? If I press here, what happens? You don't personalize or take credit for the output. You credit the fact that you yourself are able to create. So if you stand true to the fact that you I don't want to say manifest because I feel like the word is used. So we'll stick to create. I am a creator. Whether what I create is good or bad, that's judgment, right? So if we focus on fine-tuning the tools we have to create, find out what they are, find out how they work, find out what kind of combination yields the best results, learn about who and what you are. Then you can create whatever you want and attach meaning later. You can call it what you want afterwards. But if you keep yourself clean, and it's funny because this is where church becomes useful, when we're told to guard our hearts. That if your heart is full of stress and shame and guilt because of the judgment you place on yourself, because the things you've created don't please you, when you try to sit and come close to yourself, it takes long. It's distorted in there. It's difficult to find silence in yourself because of what you've wrapped yourself around in or with. So to stay clean is not cute, to say, feed your mind things that are positive, and it's not trying to bypass anything. It's good spiritual hygiene because it's from that place that you're going to create life Whether you're going to be happy with it or not.
I can imagine. Now, Yako, you be a lot of people have a binary sort of way of looking at things, black, white, night, day, because that's the world that we live in, and I blame school for that, because 1 + 1 is 2, and people are not allowed to say 11 or maybe call it 11
Or
teen,
3.
or 3 or whatever it is. But in a creator's world, that happens. So for those people that are really married to the system and really can't maybe shake themselves out of it because, God forbid, something is not as it's supposed to be, and they think it's ruffling some feathers. Do you have any sort of words for people like that? Because I think being rigid is just making it difficult for people to be.
Well, in terms of structure, Prosper, you can't fight the system in that way. Day is day and night is night,
Right. Yeah.
What becomes important for me is understanding that in order to have a different experience, you must be willing to shift your perspective.
Right.
You must be willing to see things from a different angle. Because when you see things from a different angle, you experience things from that perspective. So, there's a lot of people who have answers to why, or reasons as to why their lives are the way that they are. And that's because they're not willing to step outside of that paradigm. They're not willing to see things from a different angle. What I can offer, though, and what I often do offer, is life or success or experience is in the whole. It's not in the either or. For instance, if you have a coin, there's a heads and there's a tails. Those are 2 sides of a coin.
Still the
right?
same coin?
But the value is not in the direction that the coin is facing. The value is in the coin itself. Just because it's facing up and we prefer up does not mean it's more money than when it's facing down. The thing is where the value is. So being whole, understanding that it's not about being on that side or on that side. It's about being the thing, embracing the fact that 1 + 1 = 3. Because the heads and the tails make the coin.
Make the coin.
And that's where the value is.
Right.
A day, 12 hours of daytime and 12 hours of nighttime give us 1 day.
Absolutely.
Do you get what I mean? So it's about understanding that we're not getting to, and maybe that's why balance is such a big thing in the wellness space. I prefer the word integration. We've got to learn to understand that the yin and the yang, left and right, I am what is in the middle. The past and the future. I am the present. Giving and receiving. I am where the transaction. So holding the paradox is my invitation. Learn to live right there where things are falling apart and things are coming together, because that's the sweet spot. That's where you get to decide. That's where the present moment is. That's where the opportunity to change is. Right there in the middle, not on because if you go on the one side, you tip the scale. If you go on the other side, you tip the scale. In the middle, right there where the heads and the tails meet, and you have a 5 rand coin. That's the sweet spot.
You know what I like about all of this? From the outside, anybody who would have been seeing or watching, it looks like you lost your job, but you literally found your purpose. Like the job might have actually been slowing you down had you continued with it. You were literally driving all of this with the handbrake on. Now that...
Yes. Absolutely. And absolutely, I agree with that. I think it was, when you become so great at pursuing performance over presence, There's nothing wrong with being able to do things. And being able to do things well. But when you get to a place where I believe I got, where it became so much more important for my voice, because at work as a director of strategic project and program management, where does the coin conversation come in there? Doesn't. It's about pushing target. It's about, making sure that we're making money, making sure that we're achieving. So a huge part of who I am just wasn't alive in corporate. And I don't want to say it wasn't allowed to be alive. It just is the way that I think I, again, believed I had, if I'm going to operate in that space, I have to be that way. And once it's gone, it's landed me straight exactly where we're talking about that. It's about purpose, whether I do this in a corporate environment or in a community somewhere, performing a healing ritual. It's always the coin. It's never heads or tails. So my purpose has come to click. I feel like I've clicked into place, if I can put it that way.
I like that. And if we can really make this a little bit, maybe what it's not, I kind of feel like from that time of the retrenchment to the time it all started clicking in, like you said, in place, it was somewhat of a rite of passage where you literally had to go through this, because had you not gone through this, you wouldn't have, one, discovered who you are, discover what you can offer, and also have that courage to be able to help others be, do, and have a happier existence. Now, for those that might be wanting to go through something like that, maybe with your help or things of that nature, what is it that you're offering, and how can they be initiated?
Ooh. Sure. What is my offer? I think I'm for people who really just want to feel whole, to feel like whatever happens in the world, whatever life throws at me, and that's why I don't call myself an executive coach or a leadership coach or this. A coach is a coach. Like, sorry, I think in tech terms, I want to say if I'd call myself a technician of human beings. Like if I'm very good at teaching people about what they are, how they work, how to use what they have to get what they want, irrespective of what it is that they want. So to say that when I say you've got absolutely everything that you need to create whatever you want to create, it's true for you and it's true for me. We struggle because we don't understand how to put ourselves together in such a way that it's like a car. If you don't understand how a car works, you're not going to be able to use it to get to where you want to go. And I think this is the biggest challenge that we have as human beings, that we don't know where we fit in ourselves. We identify as the body. We don't realize that we have a body. You're not a body. You identify as your failures. You don't realize that you are the person who created the system for the experience to occur. You are not the experience. So that is what I do well. I'm able to walk people back to a place where they can stand firmly in the abundance of who they are and what they have. And from that place, they're able to decide what they want to create with agency, with ownership, with accountability, without being married to the outcome. It's yeah.
See, you literally are giving people back to themselves, because they've been who they have been. All they just needed was somebody to maybe tap them on the shoulder and say, it's your turn to lead now, or it's your turn to be a mom now. It's your turn to be who you're meant to become. Because if we're looking at it from a vantage point of a seed, it's got everything that it needs inside of it. The trunk is in there, the leaves are in there, the fruits are in there. It's not going to go out and borrow their neighbor to say, hey, can I borrow 3 leaves because I think I'm a little bit short for summer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So where can people go to, Yako, to discover this awesomeness on the internet?
My website is www.thepeoplepractice.africa. My email address is yako@thepeoplepractice.africa, and Yako is Yako. And on LinkedIn, I am Yako Jackson on LinkedIn. And those are the 3 channels through which people can reach me.
Absolutely. What I really appreciate about this is you carry both lived and professional experience, which not a lot of people can combine together. You know, it's like for some people and for some cultures is water and oil. You know, it just never mixes, but you're that nice symphony that just, you know, blends it all together, and you're bringing it back in the best package possible. I can't wait to see what people are going to do with this information today. But Yako, now that you've brought us into your world and we're all excited about where you've been and what you've been doing, what's next? What are you working on that we can now be on the lookout for that should excite us and excite you at the same time?
Well, you mentioned a book. This is the first time I'm actually talking about it. I've been sitting on a manuscript for months now. And this is me, forcing myself to put it out. It's a point of, I'm very, I think, sensitive about it at the moment. Well, I was until a minute ago. It's called The Book of Becoming. And it really details how, in a lot more detail. So there's an element of working with the elements, how we work with our bodies, how we work with the cosmos, how we work with ancient wisdom to, again, work our place or work our way to belonging, work our way to feeling safe, and then unleashing what it is that we are capable or what we desire in the world. It is October, so it most likely will be published early 2026. And the work I do is I work with the youth, and that's where I find my calling is most effective. Youth who are going into, their first kind of experience of work. Those are the active projects that I'm working with now. And I'm finding I'm most impactful in that space. I work also very closely with executives who are transitioning, much like how I've gone through the transition. I also work with people who hold people. So whether you are a mother, whether you're a healer, whether you are a leader, if your responsibility is to hold others, that's where I play, if I can call it that. And I call it play because it is fun, to be able to, like you said, walk people back to themselves.
Absolutely. Now, Yako, you're done so well. The whole episode had ended nicely, glamorously. You just had to, commit the ultimate scene on the Online Prosperity Show right at the end.
Okay. All right. Let's hear.
Now, Yako, you did not mention you're going to be writing a book and do not pledge to come and launch it back on the Online Prosperity Show. So you can redeem yourself now.
Okay, cool. 100%. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Yes, let's consider it done.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Now, Yako, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today. I mean, your life story and your experience have so much of value for whoever is watching this right now. I mean, in life, we're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. And I viscerally believe you've literally had the lived experience and you've gone on and learned traditionally and formally. And now you're just contributing back so that others can be, do, and have a happier existence. And what a beautiful story.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure being here. And I think grateful also to you for giving me the opportunity to hear my own voice. You know, we tend to take these things for granted. We forget where we come from because we're so focused on where we're going. So this was absolutely stunning to sit here and, yeah, see what comes out of my mouth about me. I'm pleasantly surprised.
It's a good thing we hit record, right? So that's fantastic. Wow, what a powerful conversation. And I think for those that are watching right now, thank you so much for obviously choosing the Online Prosperity Show to be that place you get insights like this. And I think Yako just reminded us that sometimes losing everything is just the start of actually finding yourself again. So if today's episode maybe stirred something inside of you, maybe it was just a reminder that you're meant for a lot more, because sometimes we pigeonhole ourselves into places just because, as Yako says, we think it is who we are, but we are not really looking at whose we are. And that realization, it actually also struck me. Even if I'm at home, I'm going to check in to see if my kids are still here. They might have actually left. I heard some doors opening there. So for those for those that are watching, if you want to connect with Yako, just I'll put all the links in the show notes below. It's thepeoplepractice.africa, and you can also follow her on LinkedIn. And yeah, just learn from her. And I think that's that's how we also connected. And I encourage you to not stop there, because in our next episode of the Online Prosperity Show, I've just been given wind that we're going to be diving into ideas that will help you live a happier and more coherent existence. So whether you're in business or you're looking for your purpose or just peace, that could be the next thing that you want to do. So I can't wait to see what it is that you're going to be doing with this particular information here, because even I had to learn quite a lot. And as you have realized on the Online Prosperity Show, we just don't talk about success. We talk about becoming the kind of person that can actually find that success. Until next time, bye for now.